Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Flinchball, host of People Solve Problems, and today we have a guest, Jennifer Peterson. Jennifer, how you doing?
Good, Jamie.
Really glad to see you here. Jennifer is the manager of continuous improvement at Muscatine Power and Water in Muscatine, Iowa. Her mission is to reduce frustration for her coworkers through process improvement and problem solving. I love that. I love that mission, and even that it's stated as a mission. So it's a fantastic way to state things. Uh, so you work in an organization that never shuts down, right? This is an organization that has to stay on. It serves critical needs for the community, for the customers you serve. That can make prioritization pretty hard because everything's important, everything's urgent, everything's essential. So how do you prioritize problems when you have many, they're all urgent, time is of the essence? How do you do that for yourself or for the organization?
So for myself, I try to take like what would give us the biggest bang for our buck? Um, and then we try to work through it that way. For the organization itself, we are focused on safety and reliability are probably the top two core tenets of our organization. And so if there's a problem that has to do with safety, that is going to get tackled first and foremost. Second is going to be reliability. We are very blessed to have very good reliability with our electric utility, and our water utility also has high reliability as well as our communications utility. But we're always looking for that next nth degree of improvement, right? So we try to figure out what can we do, what's out there in the industry, what's out there that we could adapt to solve a problem that maybe we don't know is coming or that is just really nagging at us. So, for example, squirrels like to get on lines and chew through them, both in the electric utility and in the communications utility. So what we did is it's a problem that we knew we had. So we looked at what was out there and we came up with these pole wraps. And so we wrap the kind of the bottom of our poles so that the squirrels can't climb up the poles. So our squirrel outages have reduced. Like that's a pretty simple problem, but it was one of those things that just kind of kept nagging at us.
Yeah, that's a great example because it's one that you just say, hey, that's just how it is, right? Squirrels chew power lines, and I'm sitting here on a desktop and my internet, both connected to a battery backup system because of too frequent power outages, and squirrels and down trees are the two common reasons. Um, so let's just take that particular example because I think it's a great one. Um, did you wait to just stumble upon a solution and then say, hey, this is interesting? Or was it a deliberate effort to say, this is a chronic problem? Let's go try and find what we can find?
I think for that one, I wasn't super involved in that, but the team went looking for something. Like this is a problem. We had just implemented and constructed a new fiber to the home system. So all of our communications services are a fiber system. So we had to solve the problem. Like we couldn't keep doing truck rolls and keep having customers out on that system. It was brand new. So they went looking for a potential solution.
That's great. Um, and so again, like I said, it's a problem that's existed since there have been power lines and squirrels, right? So so to just decide to have the initiative to go after it is fantastic. Um, you have a lot of different expertise levels and different skills, different trades in your organization. A lot of people get involved in these problems. How do you approach collaboration, involvement, inclusiveness in your problem solving? How do you get people together and get them working on problems together?
I will generally err on the side of let's have too many people in the room. I think something that you said in a podcast or in a conversation was you can't ever solve a problem with less than two people. So you don't ever solve a problem in a vacuum. So I try to gather all of those stakeholders in the room when I'm involved. And even if it's, hey, can we get somebody from the water crew or the line crew or the comms crew to come in and help talk about the problem and figure it out? I really also try to use my facilitation skills to get the quiet people involved. Sometimes people will just come in and they're afraid to say something because they don't want to. There's just a little bit of psychological fear with that, especially if they haven't been in the organization for very long. So how can I get them to be involved and talk about the problem? And then also, we have to give them the what's in it for them. Why is this problem important to solve? Why are they important to have a piece of this problem and to have a piece of the solution? So sometimes I don't get all the people right, but I do try to get the majority of the stakeholders involved and then really try to get the opinions from around the room.
Yeah. I want to come back to the facilitation, but first, just on the what's in it for them. Do you find the mission of your organization is a sound platform for everyone to kind of connect to, or do we just all get so wrapped up in our work we forget how important that mission is sometimes on the what's in it for me?
So we recently revised our mission statement in 2023. And I think that has helped drive a lot more connection with not only the work that we do, but also the importance of the work. Our mission is that we want to empower Muscatine residents and businesses to thrive. And so everybody can tie their work directly to that mission. I also think that with our strategic plan and our core values, people really engage in those and they really value and can see the importance of those. And so they know that we want to keep everybody safe, that we want to be highly reliable. We want to be your reliable neighbor. And we can be out in the community and people will stop us and talk to us about their electric service or their water service or whatever. And when we get people in a room to talk about what's in it for them, they know it. They know that it's their mom that lives across town or their sister that lives down the street or their best friend. Like they know the people who are impacting.
Yeah. And you say, new mission and values, but I'm sure a lot of hard work goes into helping make sure everybody resonates with all that because but it sounds like that's working and as you said, kind of helps the what's in it for me because I'm part of the community too. So I want to come back to that point around facilitation skills because that's a broad, that's a broad bucket, right, of things, but the part you stated was super important, which is how do we include all the voices, whether they're quiet, whether there's fear, whether there's just, lack of confidence, whatever it might be. Do you have any tips or tricks, or is it persistence? How do you go about trying to make sure all those voices are included?
So part of it is a little bit of prep that I do in advance. I've been with the utility for almost 17 years. So I know a lot of the people in the utility and I've worked with them either one-on-one or in smaller groups or even in larger groups. So I know a little bit about them. I know that certain people don't like to be called on first. They don't want to be up in the front of the room. But for the people that I'm not 100% sure about, I will go to their supervisor and try to learn a little bit about them. I will try to figure out anyway, like what's important to them, even if it's, I have a side conversation with them beforehand, or maybe I catch them at a break and just try to interact with them a little bit so that they understand where I'm coming from. If we're in the moment of the event and somebody that I know has something to say, but they just aren't saying it. I'll try to frame a question so that it makes them comfortable to do it. I might also solicit their input by just flat out asking if it's somebody that I feel like I can get that with. If I'm still unsure, I will reach out. I'll try to go a back way. Like if they've got their supervisor in the session with them, I might reach out to their supervisor kind of at a break and be like, hey, can you talk to Sally and have her contribute? But really it's trying to drive home how important their input is, even if they think that what they're saying is so unimportant or just such a small piece, it can make the difference in a session.
Yeah.
So that's why I try to do that.
That really paints a picture of the importance of the preparation work, doing the work in advance. That's role model behavior. People ask me to facilitate, and I just say I don't do it anymore, partly because there's a right way to do it, and it's very time intensive. But that's what you're doing, and those are the results. So I love to hear that those tactics, I'll say. But it comes from a spirit, right? A mindset of wanting the human being to show up um,
Mhm.
in the session and do what's right for them. So you mentioned, safety and reliability. These are two big, broad buckets of problems that have lots of different tentacles and branches. How do you help the organization, whether it's in the room or out of the room, or how you build metric or anything else? How do you help people break down the problems so that they can more easily tackle what's in front of them?
There's a couple of ways. So if it's easy to identify what the scary part of the problem is, let's figure out a way to make it not scary. If it's a safety thing, let's evaluate the risk and the impact of that thing. For instance, we had a continuous improvement event last week on something that is safety related. The safety department was driving it, but it was going to take a lot of buy-in from everywhere else. From an impact standpoint, likely nobody's going to get hurt. But from a overall safety culture thing, it was very important. So we try to break down what's the scary part of the problem. Can we break that down even further to make it less scary? Is that problem part of a process? If it's part of a process, let's figure out where the biggest friction points are. What's the most painful part of that process? Let's tackle that first. Let's make it as small and as easy to wrap our hands around as we possibly can. What's our threshold of knowledge? So if I don't know very much about a process, I will solicit those in the room. Like, let's share the information from generation. Let's see where their knowledge gets us. Let's share the information from T&D. Let's see where their information gets us. How can we expand that threshold of knowledge out? One of the things that we talk a lot about because of a class that we took with you was, eliminate fear and comfort. So we want to eliminate that fear, and we want to also make it so that people aren't comfortable in the situation. We want to get them into their learning zone so that they can see everybody else's perspective. And so if we can break a problem down into its smaller parts, make it not scary, then people are more apt to go with a not really an easy solution, but with the right solution. They're more likely to understand everybody else's viewpoint and take that next step so that they can make the change so that we can solve the problem.
I love that connection between, we usually talk about breaking down a problem just as sort of a technique to make problem solving more effective, but connecting it to that psychological safety of it's a less scary problem once it's broken down is pretty dramatic. And of course, there's a lot of places where we know we try to do that. You talk about, I live a healthy lifestyle. It's like, just start going for a walk, right? And let's break it down into pieces. Let's start small. Let's take a step, go forward. And, but often when it comes to big problems like safety and reliability, we don't do that. And, here it is, we've been working on these problems for for decades, and they're never going to be solved, but we can solve the next bit of it. So I love that connection between psychological safety and breaking down the problem. I want to ask about, blind spots. You probably, yourself included, have a lot of highly tenured people. You're in the work for a long time. You're in the same organization for a long time. It's not like there's two power and water companies in Muscatine that people bounce back and forth between. So, especially in organizations that have long tenure and a lot of depth of expertise, there also tends to be some blind spots, right? We get stuck in what we know and stuck in how we do things. How do you manage those blind spots, identify them, highlight them, either for yourself or for the organization as a whole?
One of the things that my boss is starting to look at is training plans and having formalized training plans for different areas of the utility because we do have long tenured employees. We just had an employee retire in our area who had been here for 45 years. So, how do we identify blind spots? Well, you have to look at the work that they do and you have to approach it from outside. So, one of the things that my team does is we document processes for people who are looking to retire or who might be potential single points of failure because they're the only person that knows that information. And by asking why to somebody who has done the same task for 40 years and trying to get down to like why do you enter the information on 3 different spreadsheets and then save it and then print it out and give it to 4 people? Like asking the why will help identify those. Another way we do it is by identifying benchmarks and comparative data. So the utility has been on a Baldrige journey for a couple of years. And as part of that, you have to look at your results. One of the results that we have measured, as long as I've been here and even longer, are our electric reliability results. So KD, SAIDI, SAIFI, all of those. And typically we measure ourselves to the average for our region and for our size. And I was looking at those and I've had a couple of conversations like, why are we looking at the average? We are outperforming the average all the time. And I think it was a lack of not wanting or a case of not wanting to toot our own horn. So just with many conversations and seeing what data was available, we're able to then change that benchmark to the top quartile. We're still outperforming it, but we're measuring ourselves to something else. And so I use metrics in a lot of ways to identify blind spots because I can look at the data and I might look and say, well, we have an increased number of customers calling for this reason. Is there something behind that? And somebody who's on the phone all the time may not make that connection. But by looking at the overall trend for a month or a year, then maybe we can start to have that conversation on how to fix that problem or identify that customer's frustration or a group of customers' frustration, or even just how we can make power and water that much better by holding ourselves to a higher standard.
Yeah, I love that. Using, benchmark data, using standards like Baldrige just to challenge yourself, right? Going back to the point you made of eliminate fear and comfort, right? When you're eliminating the comfort by saying, here's the new standard, here's what we're trying to achieve. Is there ever pushback on why are we trying to achieve such a high level or such a high benchmark, or does that go back to your mission and values where people embrace challenging themselves to a higher standard?
I think people at Power and Water embrace holding ourselves to a high standard. We have our senior leadership team. We've got not really a new general manager. He's been here for 20 some years, but he's only been general manager since 2019. And he has the standard of excellence that he communicates out to the entire utility body. And so I think it's in everything that we do. We want to continually pursue excellence. And even if we don't get to be totally excellent, we're still going to have a higher result than if we maintain the status quo. And sometimes it's a matter of prioritization. We might be super awesome in our reliability metrics for electric. Okay, so we can let that ride for a year or two while we work on getting maybe our comm metrics up a little bit, or address some things in the water utility, or maybe something on the hiring side to get that standard of excellence up. And we can come back and flex those a little bit and put some prioritization where it's needed, knowing that we're going to maintain that high bar on everything else.
I love that. So I appreciate you coming on to share, what you and the team do. While I don't live anywhere near Iowa, I appreciate you and your teammates keeping the lights on, the water flowing, and the data flowing too.
Thanks, Jamie. Love being on.